Hello, welcome to the October 15th Petersburg Harbor Board meeting. This is Bob Martin, your chairman, and board members in attendance are Scott Newman, Scott Roberge, Casey Knight, myself, and we may have another one joining us, but we have a quorum. And I guess I'd like to start rolling here. Approval of the minutes. They looked fine to me. Our last meeting was November 22nd of last year. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Unanimous. And let's look at the agenda. I think we may have some additions to the agenda. It's a pretty casual agenda this time. I'd like to welcome Jim Stromdahl, who is not here now, but he should be. He was a new addition to the board. And I had a discussion item. Well, we had a couple of communications from John Murgis, who can't join this. He's very busy right now with the boat haul outs. But we have some communications relating to the Scow Bay facility, and I'd like to add those to the discussion at the end. Anyone else?
Yeah, I think that makes sense to add that to this communications discussion.
Okay, all in favor of approving the agenda with that addition?
What was the addition?
So,
You have to speak into the microphone.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Member Margus had a couple comments because he can't make it about, let's see. One was regarding something you're going to touch on, I believe, in the Harbor Master report, the possible landing craft ramp.
Okay.
So that would be one addition.
Okay, so that'll be B. And C is what?
I thought we could just go point by point down his first email there about the issues at Scow Bay turnaround. It's better. So,
Okay. So Scow Bay?
yeah, Scow Bay should cover it.
Okay. I just have to get it in the minutes.
Oh,
Thanks.
all right, well, I'll just assume, unless there's any objection, that we're approving the agenda as modified. So that brings us up to persons to be heard, unrelated to the agenda. Donald, do we have anyone online who falls in that category?
I'm sorry, Chair.
Oh.
We do have someone that does want to call in on something related to the agenda. I was just helping him dial in.
Okay.
I apologize.
How about anyone unrelated? Debbie, was there only one potential?
Only one that I know.
One potential
Sorry.
caller? Let's wait a minute here and see what happens.
He's calling the 800 number right now, so.
Okay. Are you still on the line there, Donald?
You'll see the line when it comes in.
Okay, I
And
guess
I'll be
we're-
able to see it here on the screen.
Okay, then to those listening, I guess we're waiting for someone to call in under persons to be heard related to the agenda.
Oh, yeah. That is, what's his
Oh,
son?
okay.
Son.
An option for people to do.
Mr. Cardenas, are you on the line? Mr. Cardenas, are you on the line? Okay, go ahead, you're up, please. Dan Cardenas.
Okay, go ahead, Dale.
So, I wanted to include in the discussion, I heard float houses was going to be at discussion at the end. And liverboards, I was wondering if that's something that you guys would consider changing or adjusting.
Okay, I'll ask Debbie, I guess, is that possible to include some back and forth at the end of the meeting on discussions, or is that?
So really, it is up to you as chair. Usually the way the assembly does it is right now the speaker will give their views and say thank you for listening and be done. And then you guys, have heard the views and then you talk about things under your discussion item. If you would prefer for Mr. Cardenas to wait and you talk during that discussion item, that's up to you. Over here, Jim.
Okay, hang on there. Jim Strawbell has just entered the room, so we have our fifth board member. And I think that sounds fine to me, Dan. I'd like to hear what you have to say when we've gotten up to speed on what the policies are. So I think if you can hang on, that's fine with me, or maybe you want to call back in a while.
I can call back. I'll be listening here on the radio. I figure I just call the same number.
Are we on the radio?
Yes, please, do call the same number. I don't believe you are on the radio, but you can hear this on the website.
That changes everything. No, I don't know. Why don't you hang on? It might go pretty fast.
Okay, I can just hold on the line here and just hang out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay. All right, yeah, you guys have it. I'll just be on standby.
Okay, sounds good. Any other callers?
There are no other callers.
Okay, so that moves us on to staff report, and I guess we'll have Glow's October 2020 Harbor Master report.
Okay, well, you guys should have it in your packet, and I can kind of just breeze through it, and any questions you have, pull my mask down so you can hear me on the recording better. So we've had a little turnover in staff, and currently, as of the end of the month, we should be back up to speed with the addition of Abby Hosier and Rans McIntosh. He'll be working in our maintenance department, so that's pretty exciting. Eddie and the crew did a great job while I was gone this spring. Maintenance is going pretty normal. North Harbor, Middle Harbor, South Harbor, we're just kind of keeping up to speed on those. Crane docks, South Harbor Grid, drive down Scow Bay is just kind of, the annual maintenance is going on. Then the other topics are the 2016 Gulf of Alaska pink salmon disaster allocation allocated for the Petersburg Borough came out to about $102,432.21. Know about it. That's what it is. We've been wrestling as a staff. I've been talking to a lot of commercial fishermen, the PVOA, USOG, trollers that deal with pink salmon on how to spend this. It's hard to find a project that you can do for $102,000 by the time you hire a contractor and all that kind of stuff. So I did turn in the dredging as a project, which got turned down because it's already has federal dollars in it, and they said that wouldn't qualify. So we have some other ideas, maybe a small crane at the drive down. I've got to call in to see what the price of that would be. Paving at the drive down approach. I talked to Jesse West, and he gave me an estimate of about $92,000 to pave a 12 by 750 foot swath from the approach to the street. So, that otherwise, maybe stockpiling materials to resurface the net float. Really, truly, though, the net float is 36 years old, needs to be replaced. 102,000 really won't even touch it. Last estimate I got was, over 400,000. So, maybe it's a possibility. I was talking to PVOA President Craig Evans, and he said, is there any chance that we could, maybe apply for it and then just hold on to it? We don't have to spend that money until 2024. So maybe we could just push it down the road, and maybe the disaster, we're hoping that it's declared this year. Maybe we'll see some more money. We can put the two together and get a net float out of it. So So those are things that I can ask, kind of run up the chain and see what they'd say. So that's kind of where we are. If you guys think of some great ideas, throw them at me. I can investigate them and see, But it has to, I gave you the exact writing on what it can and cannot be used for. So, anyway. This summer, the Assembly authorized the continuation of the cost-sharing partnership with the Army Corps to engineer and complete the design for the South Harbor dredge. So we agreed to pay $125,000 that came out of the Harbor Enterprise Fund to actually make the plans to do the project, and that would be the final phase of the project, which they estimated cost about $7.2 million. They'll pick up 6.5 of it. We are on the hook for 1.4, of which we can we can pay half of it outright, and the other part of it we can get a 30-year loan on. So they're hoping to get that out the door here sometime this fall, probably end of the year for the Assembly for our approval, and then hoping to start that phase May of 2021. As we're watching the calendar tick by, I think that's pretty aggressive. I don't know that they're going to get it to that point because they have to go out to bid, and that takes a certain amount of time, federal regulation, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, they're hoping to be done with it in May of 2022. Part of it also, it has to do with the calendar of what you can, when you can do the dredging as it pertains to the Marine Mammal Act. So that's why they say we got to get it done in May because you can't dredge after June. So anyway, so those are some, or actually you can't dredge after May 15th. So that's why they're saying, paperwork can be done by May. So we'll keep you posted on that. Changes in the fleet early this year in regards to landing craft sales. We had the RB purchased by Sig Burrell and Rock and Road. We had the Rainforest Islander purchased by Eric Yancey, and we had Charles purchased the what's the one he has? Front runner, right. And so we were anticipating going to see a lot more, and we may still, movement of equipment and materials and those kind of things. And right now, really the only place they can use is the South Harbor launch ramp. And landing crafts and a launch ramp, that doesn't really mix well just because they'll wear it out. Everything from prop activity at the bottom of the ramp, as well as their fronts coming down and starting to work on the concrete pads. So, we started thinking about, well, where would be a place that they could come and go from maybe, certain portions of the tide. And so I got a hold of Alan Murph and got us an estimate on what it would cost to design something out at the turnaround, because we really don't have any place in town or in town inside the harbor facility that would really work for it or room for such a thing. So anyway, that was just something I wanted to have just kind of on the back burner. As it stands, it sounds like Reeds are they just asked for a permit from the city to, and the Corps of Engineers to do quite a construction out there at their property at the Beachcomber site. Rainforest.
You mean Burrell?
Yeah, Burrell's. Rainforest only came in a couple of times this year. I think they're using Papke's. They're using the Banana Point more so. And Charles, he used it a couple of times and we watched it and it was okay. But anyway, I just wanted to have that kind of, maybe if not shovel-ready, shelf-ready, that we could start talking about it. So I know John has some concerns, and yeah, let's talk it all through, because it's not on the to-do list quite yet. Petro upgrade. The manager has kept contact with Petro through our lawyer and their lawyer. Negotiation terms have been extended. They're still in effect. DEC has areas of concern when they did the Phase 2 survey of the land. And so Petro has until the end of the year to come up with a plan on how to address those areas. And the manager was kind of thinking they might ask for an extension because of the pandemic. So really haven't heard anything, and probably won't hear anything until the end of the year. And then just miscellaneous, things like I was surprised when Ben tallied it up, but we've transferred 8,300 gallons of waste oil. I thought there'd be a lot less, but usually we hit about 12,000. So it's a little less, but there's more than I thought. The tour ship activity and transient vessel activity was very low this summer, so at the end of June 30th, we were down 9%, because we see a lot of that income in May and June, so we're down 9% there, and I expect we'll be down, possibly another 9-10% this year because of that second part of the summer. So we'll just have to kind of watch that. But it's nice, actually, that we break it up into 2 years. We can kind of, it's all the same. It's all coming out of the same pot. But it's still kind of nice to kind of see that hopefully next summer we'll be back to some semblance of normal and pick up where we left off and only take a 10% hit. Let's see, I'm part of the EOC, and as a point of entry, the harbor was on the front line of all the incoming traffic. Things really went well, surprisingly. We had a few incidents, but it went real smooth. We passed the 5-year review of our facility security plan with the Coast Guard. Just got that paperwork back this week. We hire Marine Exchange to help us address the technical side of that, so it was good. The conference, the Harbor Masters Conference, was canceled. They did some online activity, but we didn't get to go to Nome. We've been helping a lot of mortgage customers with the PIA CARES Act $500 assistance for stall holders. So if anybody hasn't gotten that, come swing by and we can get you the paperwork needed and the form. Otherwise, it's online and you can do it yourself and just turn it into them. That was really, really nice of them. They're doing it across the board for all stall holders. We've tested all our backflow preventers like normal. Everything was good. We sold 520 launch permits so far this year, which is up a little bit at this point, just because I think a lot of people elected to stay home rather than travel. So there was actually more activity in the harbor locally, and I'm getting a lot more customers holding their stalls over winter because I think they think it's a great way to get off the island without technically leaving the bubble. So that's good for us. We elected not to do any ticketing for parking lots just because the activity didn't really warrant it. There was just so much less activity in our parking lots, so we didn't. If you realize that it will take a staff person between 2 and 3 hours a day to deal with that, so it was nice not to assign that task to somebody and actually have them doing harbor stuff. Of course, Southeast Extinguisher inspected all the fire extinguishers like they do. We replaced 3. And I've been working with the Assembly, the administration, and PDC to request the governor to declare this salmon season a disaster. I kind of instigated that at the local level and got numbers from Troy, who's our regional biologist, to really prove that, and so ran it up the chain, and we got a hold of the lobbyist, who kind of was news to him, and started the conversation. So we are waiting on final numbers from Troy Tinas, to have very specific numbers to turn in to the governor's office so that they have, rather than just, hey, add our name to the list, we can actually give them good information. So, and the only thing that I didn't have on here is that I remembered that PIA had offered us a grant opportunity for some outdoor lighting, and a couple weeks ago Angela called and said they got the grant, so they're going to help us put up some outdoor lighting, $7,200 worth of, around some of our buildings and some of the ramps and that kind of thing. So anyway, that's it. Any questions for me?
Thanks, Flo. Anyone got any questions?
I wonder, on the budget side, or I guess budget type side of thing, how are raw fish taxes shaping up? I mean, do those numbers not come in for a while? Or
it can come in anytime between the end of October and the end of November. That's when we usually see that. And again, this year's will be last year's.
Right.
So we should still see, that should be on par with what I estimated us to get, which was about $300,000. It'll be next year that we will see.
Result of this year.
Yeah, results this year. So we'll definitely factor that in. I don't know that it'll change much in the budget, just because we want to show that to the assembly that, the demand is still there for it. They get to decide every year on how they spend that, and usually they commit the first part of it to the general fund, and then we get what's left over. So anyway, I've always treated that raw fish tax as money that we put aside for matching for these projects. I mean, that's really how we came up with enough money, $3.5 million for this dredge project. It's come through that route. We try to do O&M and daily operations through our actual receipts, our income. So, anyway.
All right. That will bring us on to new business. So, item 8A is the Hofstede Warehouse property on Skylark Way. Since I guess you've been at the
Yeah,
point of
Melinda
communication, go
Hofstede
ahead.
and Albie came to me, and I provided each of you of a copy of the map, just so you'd have an idea of where we're talking. This came off the borough website, and so I tried to make it evident by putting an X on the 4 parcels, and they offered it to us for, I believe, $300,000. And I'm sure it could be negotiated. Anyway, if you don't, I don't know if you want to have details on it, but the warehouse, and I did go online and look at what the tax rolls have it down listed as, and they have the warehouse and that bigger chunk listed at $92,900, and then they have the 3 smaller chunks are the ones that are off of that. They have those listed at $17,400. So the grand total for those 4 chunks is $145,100. So anyway, that's just what would come off the tax rolls if we were to say, hey, that's something the harbor needs, or do you think that the borough needs in some way? As a staff, I don't see it. It's off the beaten path. The warehouse would be handy. There isn't water to the warehouse, though there is water to the corner up by the warehouse, so it would be relatively easy to get water to the building. It would be handy to have as a place for us to do our maintenance and to store things, but it's really off the beaten path, and it's gonna, if I have guys out there working and I need them in the harbor for whatever reason, we're such a small staff, it would take them a while to get from there to there. Plus, every time you forget something, or every time you need to come to town for something, every time you need to go to the South Harbor to implement whatever you've been working on, or wherever, there's going to be a lot of road time. So anyway, that's just my comments, but if you guys,
Well, let me ask Jeff first, has this come before the assembly yet? Is this the first viewing of it?
No, it has not.
Okay.
city manager just requested you guys to, because I think Melinda and Albie didn't go as far as the assembly, they just came.
Do you have any idea on a time frame to consider it?
You know, I think they probably are getting close to listing it publicly, if they haven't already. This was earlier this summer, and, you know, I didn't see a driving need to call you guys in from fishing to discuss it, but,
Oh, it's nice to know when these things
Yeah.
come up.
yeah, it's
I
great.
don't know if, does anyone else want to weigh in on anything about it?
If Glow doesn't see a particular need for it at the present time, then I guess I don't. I can't.
Again, we're really, you know, we're pushing for that Petro
Yeah.
property. That's a real,
That's what's kind of been in the books for a while. So you know, why change the?
yeah,
change the tune?
that's the ideal,
Yeah.
you know, so for us, would be the ideal.
All right, so in the absence of any direction there, I guess we'll just, Jeff, you can say we weren't especially interested in making any decisions on it, so we'll move on to 8B, the Schwartz family property at 412 South Nordic Drive. Go ahead, Glo.
Yeah, and I just again provided you with a overlay there, and I kind of tried to explain what was surrounding it. So I believe, and Jeff can correct me, he's the one that kind of brought it up at the assembly level to push it to you guys. I believe it's the X with the circle is the one they're interested in selling, possibly to the borough. And then just for you to know that the ones that have the dot, the big black dot, are already borough-owned pieces, and the ones that have the dash mark are State of Alaska owned. So those, and the other ones that don't have are private, are other, you know, people's. But the rest of the X's that don't have the circle, those are also owned by the Schwartz family trust. So, and I can give you a little bit of the, you know, of the value. I did look up those values on the borough website just to see what the tax roll, you know, it would come off the tax roll. And that particular one, it's interesting. Again, it's kind of hard, but the overview where the lines are not really true to how the property lines are. And I'm not sure why that is, but it is. And so the one with the X, if you can remember back when the Clarks had a home there, that's the lot that they're talking about. That home ended up falling in and they removed it. That's the actual lot. And so it should be on this map a little bit more south. The second home is part of the biggest chunk that is an X without a circle.
Okay.
And that's a little bit more of maybe a better description. But that being said, on the tax rolls, that X with a circle mark was valued at $8,600. The other portions, the smaller ones were, one was $6,000, one was $5,100, one was $11,900. The biggest one with an X with the home on it is valued on the tax rolls at $65,500. So the entire, you know, so I wasn't sure, and maybe Jeff knows, and I checked with the city manager. He said this was all verbal, and so there wasn't anything written down, but he remembers that it was, he made the offer of like for $165,000 for that one chunk. But I don't know, maybe he meant the entire, all 5 chunks, or all 5 pieces. The grand total of all 5 pieces is $97,100.
That's the borough's value?
That's the borough's assessed value, or what they base the taxes on. That's what he's taxed on, is 97, I added all those up to 97,100. So, again, I'm not, maybe you're more clear, Jeff, on it, Julie.
I just thought it was the one piece.
Yeah, I don't know, and, so,
And so that one piece has a structure on it?
no,
No, so it's just south of that house that's down below.
yeah.
That whole
believe.
projection needs to shift a little bit. You can,
Yeah, it's this.
You
I'm
can
sorry,
see it
but
if you
it
line
kind
it
of
up
gives
to
you
the
the
house
better
across
idea.
the street. You can see where that grid needs to shift.
So adjacent to it is kind of the culvert area, where that little park is that they've dedicated to the accident victims. And outside of that is State of Alaska. And then north of that is the borough chunk that's out there on the tidelands.
How big is that culvert? I've never seen the culvert. There must be a big,
Well, it's like an 8-foot, it's a big culvert.
it's a big one.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so it looks to me like maybe the toe of the DOT parking lot probably spills onto that other lot if we were to shift those over.
Yeah.
And how do we end up with that one that's seaward of the Schwartz property?
I don't know, Jim, can you explain that? Those are all DOT that didn't get transferred over when we took over ownership of the South Harbor. For whatever reason, the parking lot was not included in it.
Well, they didn't buy their rights to the beach back in the 60s when they could,
The Clark family?
The Clark.
Yeah, okay.
So
Okay, there you
all
go,
of a
that's
sudden
it.
they don't have the beach
Yeah.
property.
So that's why we've just always owned it.
Well, let's take advantage of our technology here. Let's invite Mike Schwartz to answer any more questions we have. There's no reason I can see that we're talking about this without him. So go ahead, Donald, if you could unmute Mike Schwartz.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hi, Mike. I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah, I think it's fairly obvious that the harbor needs more parking in the South Harbor. When you go down there on a weekend, you've got as many as 25 trucks and trailers parked out on the street. The advantage to the city is, of course, you already have state land involved in the parking area that's there in the South Harbor. You would gain T56 and T57 because it's state land. And I don't know, Gloria Ann, whether or not you have to buy that or whether they turn that over to you. You already own T59, and then my lot, the lot one, the small one, if you were to buy it, of course you would in essence have 4 lots there. And as far as the value, Hillman-ish just paid $225,000 for a similar lot. It does include the tideland. The other alternative, if you're going to ever expand, is to go the other direction, and then you've got 2 houses and their tideland lots that you're going to need to purchase, which I would guess would be in $500,000 to $650,000 worth of property. So anyway, we're going to put this up for sale to the general public, but I just wanted to make the offer to the city in case they were interested in purchasing it.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Does anyone have
Are there any questions?
Mike, are you offering to put up for sale all 5 of those pieces of property?
Well, I don't know why you don't have the. It was just re-surveyed. Rick Braun surveyed it, and there's only 2 parcels there. There's Lot 1 and Lot 2. And Lot 1 is what I want to sell. Lot 2 has the house on it. And it's unique property in that it's commercial too. You can build property line to property line. And if you look along Petersburg, there are no other lots available in that under that definition. So.
And so the lot in question...
I'm only interested in... I'm sorry?
So the lot in question is the one with the X and the circle in it. Yep.
Well, I don't have an X in the circle. All I have is I gave Bobby the brand new survey that was done by Rick Brock just recently.
Okay.
So Mike's probably, what he's saying,
And
is he combined all of these fives into two pieces. So the little corner pie piece and the one with the X and a circle is the one he's offering, I'm
Okay.
assuming. And those three, 1, 2, 3 that are kind of stacked, that's the second one, and he probably cleaned up the edges, I would
Okay.
imagine. I haven't seen the new survey, so I just took this off yesterday from the city website, so that's all.
Yeah, sorry, I took a photo of that nice new survey, but I thought it would be here, so I didn't bring it. But
That's okay.
Well, one thing that would interest me, and I don't want to go down the road of spending much money getting these numbers, but what it would take to actually fill in and extend the culvert and actually access this in a way that would someday mean more parking, because I don't really have a very good idea how much in design and permitting and filling. But even parking here for this meeting, even during a residual lockdown, I still can't even find a place to park to come to the, I mean, it just seems like parking just keeps on growing. And I think this is an important thing to look at. I think our time frame, though, is pretty long on how we think about these things. It might not work with something going to market and trying to compete with the real estate market. So do any of you want to pursue this further?
I have a question. It seems like this, do we have access to the state land? Can we fill that in too? Because if we don't get the state land, then this is a moot point.
Yeah, it's kind of orphaned there.
But if we could use,
Well, you already have state land included in the parking area that's there, so I don't know why you wouldn't be allowed to use the state land. It's not going to be used for anything else.
parking lot, South Harbor.
No, it goes up to kind of
includes
the
the
edge
culvert?
of that little park.
Okay, so there's still 15 feet
Yeah,
there.
it's where the culvert kind of is, comes out from that,
Yep.
alongside Pete and Sylvia Nielsen's. That kind of drains that muskeg.
Yeah, I know the culvert.
I guess what I'd
Yeah,
get,
you wouldn't have to.
the price of the property could end up being a very small part of this whole thing. So this could cost $2 million, and, I don't want to see us sort of take a little bite and then realize we can't bite off the rest, and it would just sit there. So I guess to make a decision, we'd have to kind of have more information. You guys want to?
On its face, it kind of seems like a complicated way to gain parking. I don't know how many more spots you're going to get out of that, and how that's going to change the convenience of that parking lot. Seems like
But what you're saying is that if you purchase this piece of property and use the DOT's spaces plus the piece that the borough already owns, that would increase your parking by...
It could in the future give us a big, I know I always think about our North Harbor parking situation, which as a North Harbor user, it's a pain in the butt every single day, and all day long when I'm busy working on the boat. And just drive in circles sometimes and go home and park and walk around or something. So I just think long term, it is good to think about these things.
Yep.
I wish we had a better solution. The cost of adding parking to the North Harbor bulkhead has been, one time it was thrown out there, it turned out to be like $35,000 per space. And that's probably cheap now compared to what it would be. So it's just, these things come up, and I think we should think about it, but I think right now we probably know what we need from Mike here.
In the past, the borough has a fund that it's called, that they actually purchased from Maury Matson, the property that we expanded the parking lot in the crane dock in over. If those monies were available, maybe that would be a good way to use those monies.
What about the potential for extending beyond those two properties, because you look at the line there, I mean, you must have taken some type of a core permit to extend the existing parking lot out as far, so effectively, you could get like another third more.
You could, yeah, no, for sure.
But the Matson property, I haven't seen it being used that much, even though we bought it, and it's there, but, I mean, I drive past that several times a day, and I don't see it being used that much.
Summertime it is, but yeah, you're right, it's seasonal. We use it for storage in the wintertime.
Well, what do you think it would cost to work up a back of the napkin cost estimate to what we're really talking about
Well,
putting this to use?
here's, just to jump down to the next thing, it was Murph, he's the closest thing we have to an engineer that could do this kind of stuff locally. And he estimated it costing between $17,000 and $18,000 to come up with that for Scout Bay. So I would imagine it'd be something similar like that. If you want to spend 20 grand on coming up with and that would, what you would get there is you would get a design, you get estimates, you get permits. He would go through the conversations with the state. And the Army Corps.
Well, what I'd be looking for at this point would be something about 1/4 of the way of that,
Nope.
So, well, I'll just throw it out there to you guys. Entertain any motions to move forward in any way on this property. Otherwise, I guess we'll have to consider that we took a look at it and we're going to pass. All right, so I think we're going to pass on this and punt it back to the assembly. So thanks a lot, Mike, for your questions. And I guess we'll move on to the Ocean Beauty property. I'll give it back to Lois.
And,
So Gloria, just for
yeah,
clarification here, so the borough is not going, yes, I would assume that the assembly is not going to move forward with this since there was no real desire from the harbor board to move forward with this.
yeah, I guess my questions are, as a staff person, are kind of the same. I'm, right now all our eggs, I have this looming project of the cores right now, and that's kind of where our money is, but not saying that this is a good idea. Jim, as the past harbor master, that was definitely a conversation, a direction. I don't know that the harbor has the money. I don't, but if you want to, consider buying it using that fund, then I think that, so the borough could expand. That is definitely something that, at that point, maybe it would be wise to spend 20 grand to get the added information. But at some point, when you get 200,000 into purchase and then a design and then they come back and say it's going to cost you $3 million today, and okay, well, we'll put that on the shelf. Right now our money is, we just don't have a lot of money to throw around.
Okay.
Now, but again, if the borough, assembly says, we see the vision for that, and we think owning that piece of property, much like they did with Matson's, because let's say, this is kind of the exact same thing. They purchased Matson's in anticipation of someday going the entire length of that South Harbor parking lot. So today it's 7 parking spots. 30 years from now, if we expand all the way out to the toe of the creek, we could have 40 more parking, or 30 more parking spots. And someday we'll be really glad we did that. This is kind of that same kind of thing. And they use the money from the, what is that account?
The property development account?
Property development.
Yeah.
That's where that money came from. And, so you could definitely as a board say, we don't have the money for it, but we sure encourage for future harbor for the borough to pick it up and suggest you use that fund for it.
Okay. So I'll just go ahead and put it on the November 2nd agenda as a discussion item for the assembly.
Yeah, if that's the way you want to.
Yep, I agree. We have no objection to it. It seems like a valuable piece, but the likelihood of it ever being developed is kind of up in the air right now, so I don't know what else to say. But thanks a lot for bringing that to us, Mike, and so we'll keep moving on the agenda here. Ocean Beauty property.
Okay, this one is similar in that the borough manager, this didn't come from the assembly, this also came from the borough manager. He said, since you're talking about property, here's another piece that's adjacent. So again, I provided you with an overview. Tried to spell out what is owned by the neighbors, what is owned by Ocean Beauty. Again, I looked it up online on what the value is, and the value of the tax rolls for the plant and the trestle is $1.5 million. The two chunks, the smaller chunk that's close to the outline that has an X on it to the outline between the fish and game, between the fish and game and the plant, that one was valued at $64,000. And then the third X in is valued at $122,000. And then the little pie shape up there by the street, up by Harbor Way, is valued at $53,000. You'll notice following that little final X towards the street that I put a little dot on. That's borough property that is leased to them every year. The bunkhouse is valued at $1.334 million. So the plant and the water side of Harbor Way is a total of 1.75, and then the bunkhouse is valued at 1.334, so 1.4 million. So it's quite a value off the tax rolls in that neck of the woods. Also, they have for sale, if you look back on your Hofstede, the first map you looked at, they also have a chunk of property out there on Hungerford Hill that has a warehouse and a lot there, and that is valued on the tax rolls at $367,000. That also is for sale. We have the manager looked back, and there wasn't really. I mean, I think they've got it listed, the plant and the trestle, for sale, maybe on the website for $800,000-900,000. But I think it's all negotiable. If you were to be interested in any of those properties, we could, go to the assembly and say, hey, maybe negotiate for the one on Hungerford, or maybe negotiate for the bunkhouse, or that kind of stuff. But he just wanted you to be aware that they have approached the borough, and it sounds like if you're in that business, it's a pretty good price for the value. But this is what will be coming off of the tax roll. As staff, I don't really see any of it as unless you were to get it all and have some great idea of what we're going to get into. Harbor per se, I don't see much of the need for any of them. Again, the piece out at Hungerford, it's kind of attractive like Hofstede's. A little more expensive, but has water to it, I would assume. Haven't looked at that, I'm not for sure. But again, it's off the beaten path, so as a staff, I don't really see
Any potential for parking in the little tiny triangle piece next to Harbor Way?
No,
No.
no, that's the loading, that's
Yeah,
their
that loading ramp,
loading
so, yeah,
ramp
it's all
thing, so.
on the whole.
They actually, where they back the trailers into, that's what they lease from us. So if they give up that lease, we'll gain the parking.
But it's not a lot.
But actually, that's part of the harbor, right? They're just leasing that where all the vans are?
Yep, exactly. So if they give up that lease, we'll get that anyway.
There's a possibility if they do sell that property, that the lease doesn't go with it, does it?
No, it does not.
So, I mean, we'd have more parking right there, quite a bit. I just don't see where we have the money to even be looking at this.
Again, you could say, hey, yeah, it'd be a great asset to the waterfront. The harbor
No.
doesn't have the money, but maybe that fund that Jeff, whatever,
fun to
property
do.
development fund.
It's fun to
Hey,
do a little online shopping, but yeah.
Yeah, but I got big dreams too, but
Does anyone want to weigh in or move forward on anything you see here? I like the chance to know what's going on.
yeah.
Once in a while, something might come up that we really,
Well, and I think
do.
it's probably something Jeff can just put in his back pocket and say, when the topic comes up, hey, the harbor board did discuss this, and I don't want to buy it, but if you want to buy it for them,
and it may not be a Harvard thing, it may be a PEDC thing or something, but
Yeah.
some valuable stuff here, but my guess here is this is for someone else to take on.
Okay.
So, want to move on to the next item?
Mr. Chair, this is John Davis.
Hello, John.
Hi, I just joined you. Just want to let you know I am online. Thank you for allowing me to get the 2 boats out and safely. And so I'll try to catch up.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Do you have a copy of our agenda with you?
I just sent on the email last night.
Okay. So we just got done with item 8C, and we're going to move on to, we went through the 3 properties, decided not to move on any of them, and now we're going to talk about the pink.
Roger that.
We're going to talk about the pink.
Okay, I'll follow you. Thank you.
Okay. We're going to talk about the Pink Salmon Disaster Fund. Go ahead, Bo.
yeah, and I kind of addressed that through my harbor master report. Again, we're kind of at a loss at a specific project that we could do for this amount that, again, will directly help pink salmon harvesters or processors that doesn't already have federal funds involved. So that's kind of where we're at. I like the idea that Craig had, is to try and see if we could hold out, and maybe something will come on along the line. Maybe we'll save enough money. Maybe we can get some more money through another disaster route. And, really ideally, the net float is probably the one that makes the most sense. But we don't have the money that it would take to do that project at this current point. Maybe by 2024 we would.
Yeah, you guys be thinking about things that might benefit. In my mind, the pink salmon are, tend to be towards the larger boat fleet, so I'm thinking tenders and seiners, and, that's why the dredging was a perfect possibility, but it's not going to happen. So, do you want to weigh in? Just keep it in mind.
Well, I mean, for me, ideally, you'd be able to Harvard get the money and you'd be able to spend it on what you need to spend it on, what you need to spend it on, rather than having to look for development or improvement. Yeah. I see it says maintaining infrastructure that supports pink salmon commercial fisheries and community. And down on Harvard, there's all those floats that you've got to do preventative maintenance on all the time. How much does that cost every year? There's seiners docked into those, and there's gill netters that catch pink salmon, in those too. You got 4 years to spend it. I mean, the $25,000 a year that you can plug into just maintaining what we have.
Yeah, and that, that could be a possibility, we could pick out a few saner stalls and do theirs or something. We've thought about that, buying material, just to stockpile material, because we've replaced all the hinges on them. And I actually have a estimate from Somerville to retro all of the finger floats, because we realize that the next improvement, which will be replacing much of the 1984 built float system, is going to be probably close to 20 million, which we would be able to match 5 of that statewide. So, like you say, it's going to be, which we've already started. We put in the budget between 20 and 30,000 annually to rebuild finger floats as we can. But at some point, we would like to redesign so that we could build either what we'd like to have is a design that is approved, that is sanctioned by the engineers, that we could just have finger floats built 10 at a time, 5 at a time, that we could install. And so Somerville has given us an estimate of $90,000 to design these finger floats that we would build, on land, put in the water, float, just remove the old finger float, slam in a new one that would work with the present main float. And then kind of rebuild this 1984 section that way. That's probably the only way we're going to do it. And if we could save $1 million, go to the state and get a match for $1 million, then you got $2 million, and we could do maybe 20 stalls or whatever, chunk of the main float and a section of section of the main float and a chunk of finger float. So that's kind of the route we're going anyway. And but initially we got to put out some design. We got to these are public facilities. I just can't go and design something myself and implement it, put it in. It's got to have an engineer stamp on it. So that's kind of where we got to start. And again, all our eggs are in this dredge. There's a lot waiting on this. When we get done with this dredge project, then I think we can get back to business, and that's the direction we're going. So I agree with you. If we were just a little further down the road, we probably have, another perfect project.
Just for me, they have developing, improving, or maintenance, and I'd, rather go the maintenance route, just go with what we got, rather than without crane on the drive down dock would be cool, I guess, but we got 2 cranes overboard.
For sure. Yeah, and just to, $102,000 when you start hiring the engineer, and then you start hiring a contractor who's going to, literally to get Jimmy to mow, that's the closest contractor we have, mow from Scow Bay to town. That's going to be $25,000. So now you've eaten up half of your 102. What can you do for $60,000 after you buy materials? So pretty soon you've
Yeah, but if you use that money, it's like he says, it's for maintaining infrastructure for pink salmon. Well, we all catch pink salmon. So it applies to pretty much everything we do.
Well, it's easy to say that, and so I tried, and so you turn it into the Pacific Northwest Committee sitting down there in Portland, Oregon, and they say, no, we make the decision. You have to turn everything over to them, and they will bless it.
We have to get their blessing.
Yes,
before
we
you
got to
spend
get their
money.
blessing before you can see, here's on the back here, here's the letter. We included here. These are the guys that are making the decisions. So, I'll throw all sorts of ideas at them and see what sticks.
Well, I like where Casey was going with that, so if there is a way to keep probing that path, I think that's a great way to go instead of looking for something new. I hadn't really thought about that, and I know you're all over it, but
Yeah.
that'd be my guidance is don't give up on that yet. If there's
Yeah,
a way
no,
to-
that's definitely, I figured that, here this dredging would be ideal just because it's,
You got 4 years.
yeah, and you get 4 years.
But he had
So,
lots of time to run things up the flagpole.
yeah, right.
Yep.
So, anyway, but if you come up with some great, that would help keep salmon habitat even. I mean, I even went the route of, is there a hatchery close by that we could say, let's send the money to them because that's really going to enhance their program. But, Port Armstrong is probably the one, and they haven't really been, I don't know if they didn't have any open access fisheries lately. It's just been kind of Kernvik going out there with the Marsons.
Yeah, I think it's cost recovery.
Yeah,
only.
only, so, anyway,
And then some trawlers,
I mean,
Okay, I think we chewed that over pretty well. Number 9 on the agenda is communications, and unless you guys have anything, I'd like to just roll that into discussion, because my point of, now that John Mergus is back on the line, his communications were kind of driving some of the discussion items we had there at Scal Bay, and then after that, we can do well, which order should we do it in? You want to do the houseboats first, Flo, or you want to do...
yeah, it doesn't matter to me. You have it down as house was A, and,
Yeah, okay, well,
because you got Daniel too.
so we'll do the houseboat thing. You want to talk about our policies? Do you want to get Dan on right away, or do you want to give a little presentation, or...
Well, just, I included in all of your packets it's the code, so you can look up the liveaboard what the exact code is right now, and also what the, under prohibited acts, the conversation about float houses, houseboats, and that's what the law is right now.
Okay.
So if you want to propose to change the law, or if you want to figure out how we can, I don't know, whatever you want to talk about. But
All right.
here is the code.
Yeah.
Where is the portion on?
The code for liveaboard is right there on the front page. It's actually 14.2.125. And then the next one, which would pertain to houseboats and float houses, is 14.20.250.
Where are we again? This is that new
On
tab.
the code,
Yes, the new tab.
the code, which I just gave you.
I got 14.20.010 is the very beginning of mine.
Yeah.
And
It's on the fourth page.
Third or fourth page back.
Yeah.
4 of 16 near the bottom, liveaboard policy.
It's titled Prohibited Acts. It's halfway down the page.
All right, here's how I want to go. I'd like, Donald, if you're listening, could you unmute Dan Cardenas, and we'll have him lay out his request, and then we'll go from there.
That sounds good to me. You got me here?
Yeah, I got you fine, Dan.
Okay, so I'm looking at the 14.20.25 prohibited acts, and it says flying and mooring pile driver scows, barges, boat houses, and or other similar vessels. And I fall under that, and right now, and I talked with Glow over the last couple months, a couple times, trying to figure out if there's anything we can work out. And I read the one right before this, 14.20.24 prohibited acts without prior approval of harbor master. And A says using the vessel as a residence, persons requesting moored space to be used as a residence, or those who, while using a moored space, not regularly use the vessel as a fishing, freight, pleasure craft, must comply with Coast Guard approved sanitation regulations. And to go down my checklist when I talk with Glow, she, one thing mentioned was waste, snow coming off the roof, and mobility, which in the end she said, not verbatim, but it says no float houses in the prohibited acts. To me, I'm reading here, like maybe she can give me prior approval. Maybe I'm wrong. But as for the waste, we have a incinerator on the way for our waste. I have a snow melting system I can purchase online that will take care of all the snow on the roof. And if need be, I will put outboards and make that movable vessel, and it is a licensed vessel with AK numbers. And it's insured. So I don't know if we go about it changing the prohibited act, getting prior approval. If there's anything I'm missing as to moving forward to try to get into the harbor, I'd like to hear that feedback and further continue the discussion.
All right, thanks, Dan. That gives us a good place to start from here. So let me first ask the board members, do you guys have any questions for Dan, or should we let Glo speak to everything first?
I can tell you part of the reason why they aren't allowed it.
Yeah, I'm glad we have you here, Jim. Let's have a little history from Jim Stromwell here about...
One of the biggest reasons on houseboats and everything, they do a lot of damage to the float system. I mean, they're bigger with the roofs, and in harbors around Alaska, they're much more harder on a float facility than a vessel. And that was one of the biggest reasons. And I don't know, I've been out of this for 10 years, but that's one of the biggest reasons the state, when they owned these harbors, didn't allow them to be in the harbors is the damage they were doing to their facilities. Now, the community owns their own harbors, not the states anymore. A lot of the rules we've been going by, unless they've been changed, was state regulation. And that's the biggest one. I mean, that was one of the biggest reasons.
Right. Okay, and is that damage to the docks due to like snow loads or just rain coming off, or?
It's just it's the bulkiness of the I guess you could call it the facility, the wear and tear on the float system. The float system wasn't designed for that.
All right, thanks, Jim. So, Glo, we'll let you speak to these issues a little bit here now.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Jim said, these are, a lot of these rules that we adopted in 2006 when we took over ownership were adoption of the state Department of Transportation rules and regulations as pertain to public harbors. These are safe haven harbors, so they're meant for vessels, they're meant for boats that have propulsion, and we are required, because when we signed the agreement with the state, that these would remain public facilities, so open to transient vessels. If we ever decided to privatize them, the state would have, we'd have to go back to the state and negotiate that. So that's, part of this is inherited from state policy. And then just to, so following that line, that these were built for sea vessels that have propulsion, that have a hull and a propeller and are of a set size. So these facilities are meant for vessels that are, 24, 26, and they have a standard width to them. So the area between finger floats are built to accommodate sea vessels, not to accommodate float houses or barges or things that are usually wider than they are long, or wider at least than a sea vessel is. So to put in a houseboat or a float house or a barge or something beside another float house, boat house, barge, probably wouldn't work in these harbors because they are not built wide enough. And they probably wouldn't even be wide enough to put an adjacent vessel. Many times these float houses are too wide to tie up. So therefore, you're reducing the amount of vessels and items you can put in your harbor. That's one of the reasons. Another one there are water and sewer hookups that, again, you would be building a neighborhood if you all of a sudden allowed an area for float houses and boat houses. You'd kind of be building a neighborhood, and those things that would come with a neighborhood are domestic issues, garbage, police, pets, kids, all that kind of stuff that comes with the neighborhood. Water and sewer hookups, more power. We have 30 and 50 amp services. Well, a lot of us know that our homes are taking more than that. And so you'd probably end up with solar panels. You'd end up with people that want to have cable TVs, and we don't have cable TV, so if they want TV, you're going to have satellite dishes. All of those things that come with, neighborhood living. So those are the things that the state took into consideration. So there are facilities for float houses and boat houses, and there are harbors that have built, like Wrangell, areas for these types of items to be moored or harbored in. And so like up in Juneau, you'll see down south, you'll see beautiful boathouse buildings that boats can rent a space and go under. Daniel isn't the first one that's come to us. Jim has lots of probably memories of people coming to him. I remember Larry McKinney wanted to do this. Mark Weaver wanted to. Mark Severson has an ongoing request to build a boathouse for his new boat. And again, we always say, our harbors are not built for those types of facilities. And if we want to go down that route, I would consider, maybe taking a section of the harbor right now that we could remove all the finger floats from, put in individual pilings out at the end so that you could build, have more space for float houses and boat houses to bow in, for lack of, front end, and then have a piling out in the end for them to moor up against. And those, but right now we've got a full harbor, and so I don't see that we have I'd have to start kicking boats out in order to come up with a chunk of float big enough to accommodate this. But that's a way to look at it, if you want to.
Let me butt in and ask, Dan, how big is your houseboat?
It is 20 by 40 and draws about a foot of water. It's newly built in 2010, and it's stoutly built.
Okay, thanks.
So we'd need to look for, like Daniel, we'd have to put him, in order to tie him up in a spot that you could tie somebody else against, first of all, we'd be looking at a 50-foot stall, because there you would have enough, two 20-foot wide boats side by side. You'd be looking more like at 50 feet between, 48 to 50 feet between.
Well, just for the sake of discussion here, I guess I'm curious, do we have any spaces, like, if we're looking at this from a harbor user,
Right.
do we have any revenue that could be filled by an opportunity like this that would help our harbor rates, assuming all the other questions could be addressed?
I suppose.
Are there some empty 50-foot stalls? Because you just said it was full.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't have, I have some 50-foot empty stalls, but I am not going to be in favor of, for some of the reasons that Stromdahl suggested, that, you know, the rain runoff, this vessel, this thing, this piece of whatever you want to call it, this houseboat, it never is going to move. So I won't, you know, there you have, now you're starting to set precedent on allowing people to get stalls for the same rate you're paying, and you go, and I use the heck out of your guys' stalls for transient, but now we're going to tie up sections of the harbor that will never move. So it's a definitely philosophy, and it doesn't fit into the harbor as it is now. And so I would say, as staff, no. But sure, I mean, if you want to go spend, you know, $1 million to renovate a portion of the harbor to accommodate, not just Daniel, I mean, you know, I'm in the process of watching a houseboat that has been in our harbor for 40 years trying to be sold, and I have repeatedly told them that the grandfather, once they sell their you know, Pam Speck's boat, once it's sold, it has to be removed from the harbor because it doesn't follow the code anymore. She was grandfathered in, but when she goes to sell it, that doesn't continue on with that vessel. So, spend $1 million and renovate a chunk in the harbor, and then, you know, disperse that out of them. Anyway.
Have you noticed any damage done to the harbor by Pam Speck's float house in the last 40 years?
It's a lot smaller than what you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is true, and we'll have gutters, and if I need to put outboards in the back of the steering station, it can be mobile. And a couple of the spots I was looking at, you know, they're at the end of A float, B float, C float in the South Harbor. A 50-foot stall will be fine. We signed a 3-year contract for Amsterdam, so our float house is moving for 4 months out of the year, so that we can go do our job as a working vessel. You know, if I need to put a hull underneath this float house, just so you will accept it as a boat, even though it is licensed to the state as a vessel, you know, I'm just trying to, you know, find some medium ground and some workway, wherever it may be. And, you know, the vessel is insured, and the dock is covered by any damage that the float house would cause. I've already talked to the insurance about that. Right now, we are moored at piston and rudder temporarily. And that was their main concern. I provided those documents, and that's where we're at right now.
And I can appreciate
if there's some sort of standard. If there's a standard of a float house that maybe I could write up and propose to make sure that all of your concerns, you know, are alleviated. You know, because I know you don't want float houses that are going to be there forever. And down the road, I'm pulling this thing out onto land. And yeah, so we're trying to, you know, find a way to work this, because we plan on feeding the chum salmon out in Thomas Bay, you know, the next 3 years. So yeah.
Mr. Chair, may I speak sometime?
Yeah, just a second. You know, thanks, Dan. We got all your input, and I have a lot of things I want to say, and now I'm going to let John go ahead there. Go ahead, John.
Thank you. I have to be upfront and say I'm extremely biased because I own a float house. I've had float houses my entire life. height of float house is a small fraction of the vessel weight. And I think it would be very doable to accommodate the concerns that have been expressed by the harbor staff. So anyway, I'd like to maybe see some flexibility there. And I think with a lot of caution, a very good contract could be drawn up that would cover possible what-ifs. That's about all I have right now. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Does anyone else want to weigh in before I give my little summary of my thoughts? Casey?
I'd like just to say, remember these harbors were built, the design don't handle those kind of things, and that's why they were put in the state rules way back. I mean, our harbors aren't designed for that. Juneau's, maybe they built their harbor when they built it. The design was there for it, but ours weren't built for it. They were built to tie up vessels.
And just,
Maybe you'd need more pilings. Maybe you'd, you know, I'm not totally against it, but our structures just, I don't think will handle that. And if you allow one in, I mean, some fishing communities in Washington were fishing communities, and as fishing got tougher, they had empty stalls, so they brought in these float houses. And take Olympia now, I mean, that's all they are. There are no fishing boats there anymore. But my concern is what we have isn't designed for what they're asking.
All right. Anybody else?
I guess just to follow up on what Jim's talking about too, is that, again, I'd love to work with Daniel, but again, if I give into one, it's going to be, I feel like, quite a few people coming and asking for the same thing. So, I appreciate what Daniel's asking for, and I'm sure we'd all love to work with him and accommodate him, but it will not be just one person. It will be numerous people, and the people that already have what I've already encouraged, like Pam, we'll have to turn around and rethink that. So.
Well, I think it's the board's responsibility to take care of what we got. And this seems to be getting out of that. I mean, plus cost.
Yeah.
Well, that brings me, that's why I'm interested in this issue a little bit, is because I'm right near Pam's houseboat there, and from what I can see, when Pam's houseboat leaves, that's going to be an empty stall. And an empty stall all winter is no better than a delinquent mortgage bill. I mean, it's zero revenue. So I'm just looking around wondering if we can afford to let these stalls go empty. If there's a way to cover the risks and expenses, like with insurance or a performance bond, if there's a way to get some revenue out of our harbor. Because what I see, we haven't talked about the budget, but I see trouble on the horizon for the ratepayer. And this is a revenue stream. So I'd like to see us maybe be a little more willing to work things, like John was saying, address the problem and see if there's an answer that works for the harbor.
When is it my understanding too that this boat would be gone 3 or 4 months a year?
This particular one.
But that, I like that somebody said contract. This would be a specific contract.
Well,
it's a
already
working
walking
boat.
that line. There are already a lot of boats that never move,
Yeah.
and people live on them. And I move. I don't know if my stall even got used this summer. It was pretty slow, but there may be a way to account for that in the rate structure. A boat that never moves at a higher rate, something like that. That's all I'm saying.
That's a different philosophy.
Yeah, what's the difference between a houseboat or a derelict vessel covered in blue tarps? You know, I mean, I think we should entertain this because you got a young guy who's kind of carving a niche for himself and trying to help the local economy by feeding chum salmon, and we're all about salmon. And I think that I also think, you know, Harris Harbor in general got a bunch of float houses, and I don't think that their structure is any more
Better than ours.
I've been in it, and I don't think it's any more.
Huh?
Our structures here is better than there. It's a lot newer. Theirs is 40 years old.
How many liveaboards do we have here?
We don't have that many. We've got, you know, in the wintertime, it fluctuates. We've probably upwards of 20. So, and just to speak, we've got, you know, we don't have that many empty stalls.
Isn't there a lease space between Trident and the cold storage? Does the harbor own lease space there? Or is it at the borough?
Cold storage?
Between Trident and then Icicle Seafoods.
Oh, yeah, yep, and I told Daniel about that.
Is that an option?
Sure.
And wasn't there one out McFadden?
Yep, yeah, I've told Daniel about those.
Well, one reason I brought up the whole issue is because it's wrapped up with other things that are going on. And on the liveaboards, there's an extra charge, and they do, you know, they incur things like year-round garbage. I've been very annoyed to see one of our precious parking spaces consumed by people who live there rather than show up to do a little work during the day. And so there are all these issues, but on the other hand, there may be ways to address these issues and come up with a way that gives us a few $1,000s more flowing into the budget, which affects all ratepayers. And so I'd like to see it on the agenda again. That's why it's just on discussion now, but I wouldn't mind looking at it. I don't know how long you have a piston and rudder there, Dan, but I'd like to talk to you some more. So maybe we've done about all we can do here today. Anybody else want to weigh in?
How long does he get to stay, piston and rudder? That's a good question.
Are you still unmuted there, Dan?
Nope.
Well, anyway, just get a hold of us. So, all right. I think we'll move on now. So, are you still on there, John?
Yes, just two very minor points that you touched upon. The added security to the entire harbor. Some of the float house is quite a bit of value to it. I think it would be worthwhile looking at other communities that did plug into Google search float houses and harbors, and then the first one that came up was Sitka, and they have a couple of float houses in there, and so far as I know, it's working out fairly well, but I think it would be worthwhile to contact other harbors as well.
Okay, thanks. Shall we move on? We had changed our agenda when we started to add your emails to our discussion as our final item. And since you're actually here, you want to go through some of your points you made about what's going on at Scow Bay and what you'd like us to consider for future meetings?
Sure, thank you. I'm glad you got the email there because verbally I tend to forget everything. Basically, I'll sum it up in that I just think that the harbor board should be more involved and more part of the conversations with the harbor staff and policies concerning the Scow Bay turnaround. It's clearly a port facility. It's extremely heavily used, which is extremely valuable to the vessel. The vessel owners are probably 70% of the vessels in Petersburg have hauled there sometime or other. And so it's a very critical facility, and the harbor board has such deep experience and imagination and can foresee problems
right, well, this came up last year too. Glo, could you explain how Scow Bay is different from the rest of the harbor?
In what regard?
Well, why isn't that under our authority or our advice capacity?
Is there something that you see that you want to talk about out there? I mean, it is. I don't know. I guess I don't understand what you're...
Do we, I remember seeing somewhere that we're allowed to be involved in setting policy for the harbors. Is that one of our roles?
If the assembly wants you to, has some questions, they'll come and ask you to policy and procedures.
Are you
I
asking?
mean,
Well, I can't.
I don't know what's
Do we
your...
only have advice authority? I thought we had some authority as a board to make decisions other than just refer to the assembly.
I would just think that you would have the policy setting authority for all ports and harbors within the
I
book.
thought there was something in there, like the dog excrement cleanup policy, or we were given some authority. But is Scow Bay any different than, say, the North Harbor?
I would say no.
Yeah.
That's owned by Ports and Harbors?
It's not, it's owned by the borough. We are the department that they've thrown at us. That and PEDC has been given the challenge of development out there. As far as as staff, I've always wanted to kind of stay out of the boatyard business and let private enterprise do that. I am, as staff, interested in a future harbor at some point out there because we own so much of the tidelands. It would be the ideal next spot for another harbor. But yeah, no, I guess I don't understand what your question is.
Well,
sure,
yes.
you have the ability to help set policy of all sorts. Is there something specifically you want to change out there?
Well, it sounds like in general, John and maybe some of the other people who lease property there are looking for someone to help them.
Hey, this is John Davis again.
Yeah, go ahead, John. Go ahead, John.
Okay, I was referring to our last meeting maybe a year ago. I brought this up, and Gray did say that the city assembly or council at one time did devote the authority of development of the Scow Bay turnaround to PEDC. And I did research that. I couldn't find any transfer of authority there at all. And so that's specifically what I'm referring to. That's it. Thank you.
They haven't given authority to do anything to anybody. I mean, they retain the authority to do everything. The Assembly has the authority to do everything. So they have gone along with PEDC, or they have challenged PEDC, or they have developed portions of Scow Bay under PEDC, and they have also developed portions, come to the Harbor Board for advice on how to operate out there as well. So I guess I don't, I don't have the authority to do anything. It's directed through code through the Assembly. They have the authority. I can give somebody a ticket for their dog crapping on the float because the Assembly has written it in code. So that's really where the rubber hits the road. Yeah. Now, as far as policy is interpreting what the code says and writing it up so that the layman can understand it. There's nothing in policy that contradicts the code. there's nothing in the harbor policy that contradicts what the assembly has authorized as.
My sense is that John and maybe the other people who lease property there would like some changes made. And maybe they're not getting enough traction with you as harbor master, and they want us to weigh in and advocate for
Sure,
something.
yeah.
And so,
I'm unaware of those, so, and I realistically, they could tread water all they want with you and with me, but if they go to the assembly, they're the ones that make the decision.
well, is there anything you'd like to talk about now, John, specifically that we could do more at our next meeting to actually push something, I guess?
Okay. John, you folks may have already addressed this, but I did read where a contract was let out with an engineering firm for development of a loading facility, barge loading facility at the end of the split. Have you discussed that already?
No, we haven't.
Okay. I have a question for Glenn. Exactly what do you have in mind for a loading facility there, and how would it affect the ramp that I recently installed?
And I gave my little report under the Harbor Master's report about that. All we were doing is we were seeing a possible higher use of our launch ramp in the South Harbor by large landing crafts, with the recent transfer purchase of various landing crafts in Petersburg and in the region. And so we started to think about, boy, it's probably not good to have it be a constant use at our launch ramp in the South Harbor. It's taking up a lot of time there when you have a landing craft that all of a sudden is using it for a couple of hours. Damages occurred from big vessels like that on various stages. So we started looking at spots that could accommodate a transfer for landing crafts. And so I got a hold of Alan Murph and said, hey, what would it cost to look at some different areas, including Scow Bay, the spit out there, because we've used that before, way back when, to do some dredge spoils, and they've used it various on and off. Could we do a little bit to use it at certain stages of the tide? Maybe if the conditions are right, throw in a couple pilings out there off the end, add some rock and kind of, be able to use that versus using our South Harbor launch ramp. And he came back with an estimate of $17,000 to help us look through that. That was last spring or this summer, and since then, there's been things that have happened. Reed Brothers have now are moving forward by getting permitting for a project out at the Beachcomber property for their vessel. Rainforest only used it twice, and it looks like Charles Davis is using his out at AML. So, there might not be a need for it, but anyway, that's kind of where that came from.
Thanks, Chloe.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead, John.
Is there a contract specific to the split, or is it to look at any possible facility that would work for a landing craft? And then how can the individual vessel owners and possibly members of the harbor board contribute to NERF as to everything from tide currents to wind and conflicts of interest, who has priorities over use of facilities and
when commercial fishermen with vessels are using it, and then there would also be, the use of a landing craft. But is that contract just for the Scout Blue turnaround?
Yeah, John, Glo she had to leave for a minute there.
Okay.
She's coming back to her microphone now.
Yeah, no, I think it's, first of all, to answer your question, it was specific. We don't have a lot of area uptown. All we have is Scow Bay that is presently owned by the borough that looks like it could be a potential spot. So we threw that at him. But we could, at some point, we probably would have the conversation, is there a better spot for it? But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the need is there, really. I just wanted to have something for us to be able to discuss at some point when, if this gets to be a bigger thing, that we could have at least something to say, okay, well, if we were to have them design something out there, it's going to cost us $17,000, $18,000. I just had no clue on what it would cost to hire an engineer to start looking at a design of something. So that's where that came from.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I know SIG and those guys with their Army Corps of Engineer permit for out at the Beachcomber. I'm wondering if he would be in the market for letting landing crafts use his facility as well.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, there's private enterprise looking after a need that might be showing up here. If Rainforest is looking for a place to take people on and off, and not, you would think that would
It's hard
help.
to compete against free, and that's,
There's nothing that's free, as you know.
Well, it's next to nothing
Right.
when we look at, what we're charging. And so that's why they're coming to us to use the, hey, next Tuesday I got a vehicle from, a couple vehicles that I'm moving from Juneau down to Petersburg, and can I use the South Harbor Launch? Okay, yeah, you don't want to screw up somebody's getting a new vehicle from Juneau, so we're a public facility, we help accommodate them, and yeah, okay, so we figured out, and they pay $200 a year as a just like everybody else, commercial use person, $250 a permit a year, and yeah, it definitely, there's all sorts of, and so that's why I was just like, oh gosh, we probably better get ahead of this and start looking at.
Well, this summer I witnessed a couple of the bigger landing crafts in the South Harbor,
Yeah.
and it definitely took a toll
Yeah.
on this. One got stuck, and they were driving a front loader, shaking the boat back and forth to finally get off the ramp.
Right.
It was shaking the dock, too.
Well,
So, yeah, no, it's taking some abuse.
And the main revenue stream for the harbor is the mortgage ratepayers. So that's where I was like, why is the mortgage ratepayer paying for landing craft access? We need to have, whether it's $17,000 to design something, that's more of an economic development fund thing, I think. Unless we have a different revenue source to the harbor. Look out for the ratepayers.
Well, and that, it was brought to me as a, hey, we got people that, that are, now that we don't have a ferry service, this might be,
Yeah, I don't
it might be the new
I
way
get it.
we move through Southeast, and, oh gosh, and since we, we're the waterfront, we're the department that is, on the waterfront, I thought, well, we probably better get ahead of this and start looking at ways we could. Now, if you don't want me to do that, I probably still do it, but.
First, let's find out
It's good to hear your opinion that you don't want me to look into that, but,
let's find out what SIG's up to first. And,
well, we know what he's up to.
and see if he's ever...
AML is already, Bob, an option. They can go to AML and do this.
Okay, well, those are good things to know, and
And out of curiosity, what does AML charge?
I don't know.
So why can't we charge what AML charges? Why can't we have a separate rate for any vessel over 35 feet landing craft that's going to the South Harbor boat ramp to unload? It's a different fee.
I think it's like $500 a spot. Stop. And then that gives them the right to, pretty much tie the place up. That's the danger of making it a thing, is that all of a sudden, well, then now they have equal access to it, and for $500, is it worth it?
Yeah, well, timing, no, you're right. It's not.
Is it, when we've got 542 launch permit holders that have paid $35, big deal. I mean, that's another one that's like, okay.
If you charge the same as the private enterprise, but the private enterprise has an easier to use facility, then that might just discourage from using it unless they absolutely had to for some reason.
It sounds like it's something we'd like to move out of the harbor's job. Yeah. So,
Well, but for, if we could go, if the borough, if the Petersburg Borough could have a facility out at Scow Bay to address the needs of these, it might be a budding thing, then, then it's going to be one of those public services that we do. I mean, your $35 launch permit does nothing to maintain that facility. It doesn't even, $535 doesn't even cover the manpower to maintain your launch ramp facility for people that are launching skips. In reality, there's a lot of what the harbor does for the good of the order to make sure that Sumner Enterprises has a place to tie up. And, I mean, your moorage really doesn't cover, it maybe maintenances your stall a little bit, but it really doesn't cover the brand new North Harbor that costs $9 million to put in, state of the art.
well,
So
who
that's
does? Who makes
kind
up
of
the difference?
what, it kind of goes into that hat, in my opinion, of, I think I've been led to believe that if this is something that is going to help our community, well, maybe it's something that we should be looking at,
Where are we looking at putting it? I mean, is it just on the inside of that spit?
No, on the end.
Oh, right at the end of it?
Yeah, because we've leased the inside to Murgus, and the other is, it just is because it's already out there deep enough that you wouldn't have to add a lot of fill. If you're going to look at another place in a sloping beach, they need like a 5% grade. They need more of a grade than what's out there. I think it's 3.5% grade is out there now. We'd have to dig down and, it's something that might work. You throw $50,000 of rock in there, and all of a sudden you got 3-4 enterprises that are, bringing stuff down, and we could start charging cargo. We do have in our code, we have a spot that talks about cargo rates and things like that. And that's what they do in Wrangell, and that's what they do in a lot of public docks, is they have rates to help pay for some of this kind of thing.
What kind of approach? I mean, what type of construction? Concrete?
Well, I've been told, like I've talked to Jimmy Martinson about it, and I've talked to Charles. He uses one down in Craig that they're able to use, that was configured using crushed rock, bigger rock, that won't go away in the tide or current, that they can come and use at 3 stages of the tide, incoming to and they can kind of set down on it, and then then you're not playing the tide game where you're moving back and forth all the time trying to, oh God, this is a heavy load, so you move back a little bit. This is something that they could probably sit down on, is what I'm hearing from the operators. What they have out at AML is a beach that is, is a grade, a certain grade that they can just load on and off, and that's how Rocket Road gets their equipment on and off. That's how a lot of those bigger construction companies move sand on and off. That kind of stuff. You go out and look at the Tuya Chase Mill. He's got operation out there. Throw in a couple pilings and maybe some gravel, and all of a sudden,
Well, that's where they're usually going, is to a remote beach that has nothing, no infrastructure. So I don't think it would take that much. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, I'd like, maybe Zig wants to make $500 every couple of weeks to handle this. So let's kick it around a little bit. Maybe in the next meeting we'll check back with you and
yeah.
see.
I mean, I just wanted to
what's up.
have an idea for you guys to see that, nothing gets designed for free. That's kind of what you're talking about when you want to start looking at different. And if you want to start looking at multiple places, you can start piling on the dollars and look at. We don't have a lot of rural property though available.
I think there's really a need, because when they backwash, their backwash from their props is devastating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, at some point, we're just gonna have to say, none. And then we're gonna start hearing from people that said, hey, you won't let Rainforest come in here. I just bought a vehicle and I can't get it down here well, you could send it AML or.
Remember, we had extensive review of, was it for the Harbor Board when they were going to come to the Banana Point launch? But, I remember we talked about it. They had extensive policies about backwash and maybe even only doing it on an incoming tide. I can't remember, but there was a lot there. So
they did go through and put that infrastructure in, and that's where they do come and go for it. What we're noticing is where Rainforest is going, free.
But there was a lot there. It wasn't just a free-for-all of just, hey guys, take it easy. It was there was a lot there, so.
They're using it now.
The Banana Point.
Yeah.
So Banana Point has a policy of how
I
they use
remember
it?
seeing some stuff. I don't know if we approved it or if it was.
No.
Because I'm thinking maybe we need to have
Let's
a
stay.
policy of the South Harbor ramp. If they are using it, here are some guidelines.
Well, it almost seems to me like it should cover the cost of an employee overseeing the whole operation and being the loading master or something to make sure this happens at the right stage of tide. It can only hold up, can only last for so many minutes or, grab this thing by the shoulders and take charge of this instead of letting it be up to the operator for the time being.
Well, and that's why I'm coming to you, because at some point I'm just gonna have to say no.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna start hearing screaming from Charles and from other people that are using it as part of their business plan.
Yeah, well, now we've all heard the other side of it, so if you hear the screaming, you'll know what to say, but,
And it'll be,
I imagine in 15 minutes of bad decision-making, they could destroy the whole ramp, with the prop wash, so,
Those guys are not afraid to use power.
yeah. I've tried very hard to get off the beach before. You don't want to be stuck there, so you do whatever it takes, so,
Yeah, exactly, and that's what anybody's going to do.
yeah. All right, so, gonna beat this one up a little bit. Any more to talk about? How about you, John? Any last words?
One last question. Is Murph Engineering with that report? Is it half done, or is there a schedule for it?
The Murph, I think John Glow was just saying that's what it would cost if we were to go down that road, but I don't believe any money has been committed to engineering of that ramp. Is that right, Glow?
right.
Okay.
Okay, I misread that. I thought that was underway.
All right, well, I think that's all we had. Any last words or recognitions?
Just one, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, would it be possible to get copies of all this? and throw it in the assembly packet for Monday?
Debbie, maybe,
Okay,
but I don't know. I mean, I'll write the minutes up.
that's
but,
great.
For you, just maybe, but they won't have been approved till,
That's fine. Just the agenda. If I can have that in the packet, then
sure.
I can say we met today and talked for a couple hours.
So you just need this one page, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That'll get me, make sure everybody knows what's going on.
Thanks for coming. I just want to thank you for your very involved.
Yeah, you bet.
I feel like we have excellent channel to the assembly for you guys.
Yep, thank you, Rob.
Going around the room, anybody else? Scott, Casey, Scott, Jim, nice to have you here, Jim. It's been a while.
Motion we adjourn.
Hey, one more thing. I wanted to, people have done this before, but I really wanted to thank PIA for this $500 mortgage relief program. It's very generous, very beneficial. So thanks, guys. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor? All right. Unanimous. We're out of here.
Aye.